Television Serbia in Belgrade. This portion of the news was recorded today at 1:30 p.m. Eastern and translated here at C-SPAN in Washington, D.C. It's a half hour.
You're watching the primetime news of Radio Television Serbia. Good evening. The President of the Republic, Slobodan Milošević, held a meeting today with the highest officials of the country. They discussed the key questions regarding the implementation of government measures aimed at recovery of the infrastructure, the work of public services that are important for the population in war conditions. It was stated that in all vital spheres of work there is a high level of work ethics, dedication and selflessness in order to protect the conditions for livelihood and work of the population, especially recovery of the vital public services that were hit after NATO aggression in vital civilian facilities. The public utility companies implement all measures to rehabilitate the services and secure the supply of the population with electrical energy and other vital needs. It was noted that all activities are proceeding in accordance with the set plans. There is intense activity underway of diplomatic nature, primarily by Russia, for a peaceful solution of the Kosovo crisis. The special envoy of the Russian president, Viktor Chernomyrdin, will discuss in Washington this situation with Bill Clinton and has announced also a meeting with Kofi Annan. In Germany, there is a meeting underway of the leaders of the G8 countries. Head of the French diplomacy, Yves Vardin, appealed for an active engagement of the G8 countries towards a political solution of the Kosovo crisis and an adoption of an appropriate resolution by the UN Security Council. The special envoy of Russia for Yugoslavia, Viktor Chernomyrdin, is traveling to Washington with a strong message for President Clinton from President of Russia, Yeltsin, with concrete proposals for a peaceful regulation of the Kosovo crisis. During his meeting with the press prior to the departure, Chernomyrdin announced that it is likely that after Washington he will visit Belgrade again to meet the highest Yugoslav officials. Belgrade, as Chernomyrdin stresses, is also seeking a peaceful resolution of this conflict, which gives us realistic hope that the crisis can be resolved in diplomatic means. In response to the journalists whether this hope is stronger after the telephone discussion between Yeltsin and Clinton, the special envoy for Yugoslavia responded that it is important to intensely work on this situation. He also did not exclude the possibility of a meeting between the Yugoslav President Milošević and the US President Bill Clinton. While in the US, Chernomyrdin will also meet the Vice President Gore and the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. He has also announced imminent negotiations with London and Paris. Meanwhile, Kremlin has announced a visit by the French President Chirac to Moscow for the 12th and the 13th of May. The main topic of the discussion of the heads of diplomacy of Russia and Belgium, Igor Ivanov and Eric Derenc, today in Moscow, was the Balkan crisis. Derenc announced that the main goal of his visit was to support the diplomatic initiatives for the resolution of the Kosovo crisis that have been undertaken by Russia. Russia can play a key role in this whole situation. There are many elements that are very important for re-establishment of peace in Kosovo in these proposals. The Russian Foreign Minister Igor Ivanov accused NATO that by intensifying their attacks on Yugoslavia, they are undermining the peaceful resolution of the Kosovo problem. Moscow cannot close its eyes to the fact that NATO bombings are not only relentless, but they're growing in intensity, said Igor Ivanov. On the eve of the meeting between Viktor Chernomyrdin and Bill Clinton in Washington, Clinton is receiving ever stronger messages from his congressmen to accept an offer for diplomatic solution. The leader of the Republicans in the Senate, Trent Lott, openly asked the president to give peace a chance. The head of the Republicans in the House of Representatives proposed that Washington and NATO accept the contested presence of foreign troops in Kosovo within a UN framework, noting that one should not miss the current favorable situation generated by the mission of Jesse Jackson to Belgrade. Senator Lott said that America should not have troops in this mission. He doesn't see any reason for it. He had doubted the operation from the beginning. We did not use all diplomatic opportunities, stated Lott. The reasonable opinions give hope that these militant circles in the Congress will be overwhelmed soon, thus opening a diplomatic option, which has been persistently sought by Yugoslavia. New York Times notes that the administration knows that by continuing the bombing campaign, there is a greater risk that the public opinion will ask for cessation of this aggression, because they see this intervention as more problematic and gradually more dangerous. In Bonn, there is a meeting underway of the G8 leaders. The main topic are the efforts towards finding a political solution for the Kosovo crisis. The spokesman of the German Foreign Ministry said that the aim of this meeting is to schedule a ministerial meeting of the G8 countries for this week. The Russian delegation is led by Ambassador Boris Mayorsky. This is the first of a whole series of diplomatic initiatives aimed towards a regulation of the crisis in Kosovo, with the express orders of Boris Yeltsin that all solutions should be political in nature. Secretary General of NATO, Javier Solana, stated that he supports the efforts of Russia for a peaceful political resolution of the Kosovo crisis. In his interview for the Spanish television, at the question of the journalist, what do you think if it's possible for the ground troops in Kosovo not to be under NATO control, Solana answered that everything is open to negotiations. London Times claims that even the most faithful follower of the American crime against Yugoslavia, that is Great Britain, is beginning to consider how to get out of the nightmare brought about by the warmongering politics of its Prime Minister Tony Blair. They note that Britain will attempt to animate the political dialogue by proposing a 24-hour ceasefire if Belgrade agrees to withdraw its security forces from the southern Serbian province. Sunday Times notes that the head of British diplomacy will announce this plan during his meeting with Viktor Chernomyrdin. London Times notes that the arrogant and miscalculated aggression on Yugoslavia leads from one mistake to another. Times stresses that it is not too late to find a solution, together with Russia, that would be acceptable to the Serbs. Times observes that Serbia still has reasons for agreement, but NATO should know that these are not reasons to capitulate. They also conclude that NATO is loser in this war in many significant respects. The Greek daily Ethnos claims that the sophisticated military technology of NATO has failed in Kosovo. They add that even after 40 days of bombing, Belgrade is not down, Yugoslav army has not been defeated, but all losses and human victims return to NATO as a boomerang. The entire modern-day technology has been employed in service of NATO to open their way into the Balkans. But despite this, as the paper adds, the sense of failure is growing with each day. German media, responding to last night's attacks on the power plants in Serbia, observed that NATO has crossed all acceptable thresholds, inflicting an ever-growing suffering upon the Serbian civilians. Stuttgarter Zeitung writes that this is high time to stop the aggression on Yugoslavia. The House of Representatives in the U.S. Congress has warned Clinton, as the German media say, adding that there are all the more vocal, there are more and more German voices against this aggression. Allgemeine Zeitung observes that NATO is at crossroads, not knowing what to do next. But NATO is not expressing power, but showing absence of any logic. The president of the South African Republic, Nelson Mandela, stressed that NATO made a very responsible move, causing great human suffering in Yugoslavia and huge material damage. A Russian transport plane left for Sofia carrying humanitarian assistance for Yugoslavia. The plane is carrying 5 trucks full of clothes, blankets and medicine, 3 jeeps for fuel supply that will be continually used to carry humanitarian assistance from Bulgaria to Yugoslavia. The plane, belonging to the Russian Ministry for Crisis Response, will fly again tomorrow and continue its daily missions in order to bring to Yugoslavia at least 2 more 20 Russian trucks. The spokesman of the NATO troop station in Macedonia stated that the alliance members have the right to defend themselves against the continued attacks of the Macedonian civilians. These growing incidents of attacks by Macedonians against NATO throughout the country have led to an increasing tension among the NATO troops stationed there. In several refugee camps in Macedonia, there were open protests by many groups of refugees because of the bad accommodation conditions and the obvious callousness and humiliating attitude of the international community. They asked that the bombardment be stopped in order so that they can go back to their homes. They said that it's better to be even in their ruined homes than be exposed to the humiliating and cynical treatment of the international community and some humanitarian organizations. The refugees stressed that they have been betrayed by the KLA members who promised to them visas for Western countries if they would leave the Serbian province. Now, faced with this humiliation, aware that they were used by the international community as an instrument to create an image for a humanitarian disaster, refugees want to go back to their homes. The Skopje Daily Večer says that even those that are accepted by Western countries are branded, namely whenever camps decide on who is going to the West, which is often paid with bribes that exceed 1,000 or 2,000 German marks. Every refugee is marked on his skin prior to being deported to the airport. The president of the Defense Committee of the U.S. Congress, Floyd Spence, announced that the release of the 3 U.S. soldiers negotiated by Reverend Jesse Jackson represents a diplomatic victory for Slobodan Milošević. Spence noted that this will lead to a new perception of Slobodan Milošević in the international community, adding that the U.S. should have now an immediate cessation of the bombardment as an appropriate response. He also added that the U.S. forces really do not have a place over there in Kosovo. He thus also added that he was among the 213 congressmen who voted last week against the resolution that supports the bombing of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. The leader of the Republicans in the U.S. Senate, Trent Lott, stated that it is time to give peace a chance, calling for a resumption of the political dialogue in Kosovo. Give peace a chance, said Lott for CNN. It seems that there are impulses. We have to use them in this moment. He stressed and appealed to find a peaceful and dignified solution for the Kosovo crisis. As noted by the Greek paper Atheniki, President Milošević has really opened the road for a final conclusion of the Kosovo crisis by giving 4 specific proposals. He has shown that he really seeks peace. This is stressed in a text under the title Hopes for Peace. Atheniki writes about the spectacular strategic moves of Belgrade and the goodwill gesture towards a political solution of the Kosovo crisis. They also are talking about the possible meeting between Chernomyrdin and Clinton that could be very important in this situation. They also observe that President Milošević has led the U.S. president practically into a cul-de-sac position with his recent moves. In The Hague, there is a new initiative today for indictments against the leaders of NATO countries because of the military aggression against Yugoslavia. This decision was made yesterday in The Hague at the World Congress of Serbs organized under the motto, "We want justice." We didn't come to the seat of justice to beg for it, but to condemn those who have been bombing us for 38 days, destroying hospitals, churches, killing people just because Serbs do not want to accept another occupation this century, was said by Dr. Sima Marković. He added that the indictments, all evidence, and signatures of over 15,000 Serbs will be delivered to the chief prosecutor of the Hague Tribunal. The German non-governmental organization Ileana published a document that proves that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Germany had information that Albanians in Kosovo were not exposed to systematic persecution by the police and the army because of their ethnicity. This document, for very well-known reasons, was not publicly announced, but it was sent to German courts that made a decision that Albanians were not and are not exposed to regional or other wider persecutions. This is said in the document published by the German NGO Ileana. If we show how Yugoslavs are suffering and how they're dying, then the leaders of NATO come to a conclusion that they can change something. This was stated by a journalist from Israel. This is cynical, but the Yugoslav television that shows this suffering has been bombed precisely for that reason. The journalist spoke during a TV show in Israel, saying that Clinton did not refrain from bombing a TV house even though he knew it was occupied by journalists and other people. The weekly paper Observer shows that the American embassy in London is conducting a real propaganda war, giving to various editorial houses in London propaganda material daily against our country. Foreign press is subjected by censorship not by their editors, but from the top. In Britain, directly by Tony Blair. In America, by the people around Bill Clinton. The war currently waged in Yugoslavia is, among other things, direct result of media war. This was added by the journalist in Israel, who said that this bombing of Yugoslavia cannot be carried on without the public opinion within those countries that are manipulated by continued coverage of the humanitarian catastrophe. The Italian media report the statement of the Prime Minister Massimo D'Alema that the release of the 3 U.S. soldiers is a positive act giving hope for a peaceful solution of the Kosovo crisis. The head of the Italian diplomacy, Lamberto Dini, stresses that there are initiatives for a political solution. Corriere della Sera notes that Bill Clinton is a subject to growing criticism by the Republicans in the U.S. Senate, who claim that U.S. did not use all chances for peace prior to deciding on the path of war. The bombardment of Yugoslavia is unacceptable. This tragedy has to stop. This was stressed by Marco Cosciuta, representative of the Italian communists. He stressed his agreement with the Prime Minister D'Alema on the value of the decision of President Milosevic to release the U.S. soldiers. Now we expect concrete moves of U.S. and NATO to stop the bombing of Yugoslavia in order to open up political negotiations. The voice of protest against the bombing of Yugoslavia was also raised by the members of the Green Party in the Italian parliament. Beijing notes that after Jesse Jackson's mission that led to the release of the U.S. soldiers should be greeted by America as a goodwill gesture that opens the road for a political resolution of the Kosovo crisis. They also cite the statement of the Senate Republican leader Trent Lott that Clinton should use this chance for a diplomatic resolution. British media see the decision of President Milosevic to release the U.S. soldiers as a hope that the mindless aggression will be stopped by negotiations. The discussions of the human rights champion Jesse Jackson and President Milosevic proves once again that only dialogue rather than bombs can give a good result. The official warmonger in London is surprised by this, having no comment except a statement by the Defense Ministry that the aggression will go on. The Bulgarian media see the decision of President Milosevic to release the 3 U.S. captives as a goodwill gesture and an important step towards peaceful solution. Hungarian media concur that this release is a new stimulus to peace initiatives. It's a move that requires a political response. They also cite Jesse Jackson. They add the opinion of the Senate Republican leader that peace should be given chance. The decision of the Yugoslav president to release the U.S. soldiers received much coverage by Czech and Slovak media, who praised it as a goodwill gesture opening a way for a peaceful outcome of the Kosovo crisis. They stressed that the released soldiers are not really considered war prisoners, but victims of a militaristic policy, noting the gratitude of these soldiers to the Yugoslav government. Due to the hostile actions and aggression of NATO against the power lines in Serbia, last night around 11:41, the electrical supply of our country was disrupted, leaving most of the country, with the exception of Kosovo and the southeastern end of Yugoslavia, without electricity. The headquarters of the Federal Department for Energy noted that the facilities supplied with electrical energy by priority, that is to say hospitals, water lines, factories, bakeries, city transit, were once again temporarily cut off from power because of the higher demand for energy. Once again, we appeal to all citizens in the interest of the public and stability of the electrical system that everyone abides by the instructions on use of energy for conditions that govern this situation, notes the headquarters of the Government Department for Energy. This means that all consumers should reduce their use of energy as much as possible and thus free up the system in order to normalize the energy supply of the Republic sooner. The President of the Republic of Serbia, Mirko Marjanović, together with the Vice President of the Federal Government, Jovan Zebić, and a number of officials, visited Novi Sad. He met the director of numerous companies to discuss the consequences of the NATO aggression on our country for the agriculture, economy, and the supply of the market. Details in this report. President of the Serbian government, Marjanović, noted that priority tasks are to defend the country and find a peaceful solution of the the Kosovo crisis. The unity of the people and their full support for the Yugoslav President Milosevic guaranteed that we shall defend the territorial integrity, sovereignty and freedom, said Mirko Marjanovic. This aggression has to stop immediately. Peaceful solution means that we have to find solution for the humanitarian questions, including the return of the refugees. Cooperation with humanitarian organizations, with the International Red Cross Committee and the High Commission for Refugees. Free movement of these humanitarian organizations in order to give humanitarian assistance. The stopping of this aggression and the withdrawal of NATO troops from our borders will also essentially regulate the actions of our forces and return them to peacetime activities. The intensification of direct dialogue about self-governance in Kosovo under conditions of equality for all people, but respect for sovereignty of Yugoslavia is also important. The international community can be secured and can be present through UN, the return of the refugees who are our citizens that were expelled primarily by the bombing of NATO. And we can never forget something that's very important. We also have to deal with reconstruction of the country and rehabilitation from all of these consequences of the bombardment. Talking about the difficulties of recovery of the economy and organization of the Vojvodina economy under these conditions, he spoke with many other company representatives and party leaders in Vojvodina. We have to preserve the economic stability, organize production, and find jobs for the workers who are left without jobs. He added that the government of Serbia has passed many other measures to help the agriculture, protect the producers, and the farming activities. The meeting was attended by Jovan Zebic, the governor of the Central Bank, Dusan Vlatkovic. They also talked about all the measures of the Yugoslav government for operation in war conditions. Boško Perošević, president of the Executive Council of Vojvodina, said that the direct damage of Vojvodina economy exceeds 6 billion German marks. There are many details on individual companies, as well as on the farming activities this season. Nedeljko Šipovac noted that over 90% of farming land has been used and that government helped with a timely provision of the fuel for sowing season. The president spoke with many officials of the city government in order to learn about what they face. The government of Serbia will do everything in its power to secure that the citizens of Novi Sad have as few problems as possible under the conditions of this aggression against our country. The President of the Republic of Serbia, Mirko Marjanovic, also met with representatives of the Serbian Party of the Socialists in Vojvodina. They said that they condemn this evil aggression against our country and the destruction of the industry and other civilian facilities. Members of the Socialist Party of Vojvodina are trying to help all other government bodies to normalize the daily activities in the cities and help the citizens in all necessary areas. They're fully engaged in defense of the country against this evil aggression. Today, around noon, the aggressor alliance near Peć and Rožaja attacked a bus full of passengers. At least 20 people were killed and 20 more severely injured. The bus was burned. Aside from the bus, several cars were attacked. The explosion was so strong that 20 meters away from the bus there was a crater with 30-meter diameter and 15 meters deep. NATO aggressors attacked numerous towns throughout the country: Novi Sad, Valjevo, Sremska Mitrovica, Niš, Kraljevo, Prijepolje, and today, once again, Priština, Bujanovac, Gnjilane. We have seen by now the strongest attack against Valjevo. Last night, this town was hit with 46 missiles, highly destructive in nature. The explosion shook the entire area of the town. The factory Krušik, already damaged, was hit by 34 more missiles, thus destroying the last remaining production facility. The largest residential area in Valjevo was also hit by a missile that ended up in the earth between two apartment buildings. In front of the city hospital, there were 4 huge craters from missiles. The surgery department has been severely damaged. In the attack of the NATO aggressors, the greatest consequences were suffered by the workers' neighborhood near Krušik factory, attacked with 7 missiles. 2 buildings are completely ruined, 10 more are damaged to the point of being uninhabitable. 9 people have been injured, 2 of them seriously. Huge material damage has been inflicted. Civil defense units and public utility companies are trying to deal with the consequences. Last night around 1:45 in the morning, 2 missiles hit a bridge on Lim River in Prijepolje. It can no longer be used. For a 4th time, they also hit the road network connecting Prijepolje with Užice and further down with Podgorica. Last night, once again, around 3:40, the NATO missiles hit the villages near Kraljevo, Lađevci and Vitanovac. These attacks continue the destruction of villagers' houses. 1 little girl was also hit by shrapnel. Our anti-aircraft units responded efficiently, hitting 5 missiles that were directed towards them. Last night, once again in Kuršumlija, the bath area was exposed to attack. They damaged the grammar school and the dining room for the students, as well as several private houses. Great damage was suffered by the convalescence center Žubor and several spa villas nearby. Day and night, without a pause, members of the naval forces of the Yugoslav Armed Forces protect 2 border zones, both the air and the sea. The unit that I command is right here on the path, that is to say, along the corridor that the NATO aviation uses intensely for their actions, especially over Montenegro, as well as for their actions in Kosovo. NATO alliance flies over us every day, but last night, actually yesterday, was the most intense one over Montenegro, and they were using specifically this corridor. Behind us, they had a whole group of assault planes aimed at the Podgorica area. They remained within our field for about an hour. Never before have we seen such intense activities by the NATO alliance. The unit that I command organized air defense of the area and managed to down an enemy plane. During their attack, I noticed 2 planes that were moving in a counter direction from one another, and at one point they directed themselves towards us. They were fairly close, and I aimed between the 2 planes and I opened fire. Afterwards, one of the planes disappeared going towards the right, and there was a lot of smoke and 2 parachutes going in the left direction. That would be it. The aim of the attack of the NATO aggressors in Montenegro was also Zeta Plain, the villages Mataguša, Gošić, Golubovac. Consequences of the bombing: many damaged houses, killed domestic animals, broken window panes, many other unexploded devices that are forbidden by all international conventions. While we were recording this evil act and the engineering units of the Second Army tried to disable some unexploded bombs, NATO pilots attacked close by. These are not human beings. These are people without human mind and character. I mean, nobody in the world does this. And today, in this time, I have no words to describe this. These are idiots. What they've seen, what they've done, is an ultimate vandalism. I cannot describe with words what it is when somebody is bombing your yard, your house. Many unexploded bombs were found even inside houses. Despite the grave danger, the engineers from the Second Army of Yugoslavia bravely and diligently tried to disable these devices.
In a minute, a panel on kids and violence. After that, coverage of the White House official dinner for Japanese Prime Minister Keizo Obuchi, followed